मैं बोल नहीं पाऊंगा। इतना कहूंगा, गांव में ज़्यादा जाया करो, ज़्यादा जानकारी लीजिए। निकलेंगे न तो आपको पता लगेगा कि गांव के बच्चे कहाँ हैं, कहाँ जिलाधीश हैं, कहाँ एसपी हैं, क्या क्या है। नहीं, अरे सुनिए, मेरे को कहा न, नहीं, मेरे को कहा आपने कि आप जानते हैं। मेरा सुझाव है, आप मेरे गृह प्रांत को रिप्रेजेंट करते हैं राज्यसभा में, कभी जाइए किसी गांव में, जाइए। डॉक्टर अमर पटनायक, मुझे नहीं कहते तो मैं नहीं बोलता। आपने कई बार कहा एंडोर्समेंट के लिए कि आप तो जानते हैं। कभी जाइए, मेरी बात मानिए, जाइए कभी।
थैंक यू चेयरमैन सर।
आपको असलियत का पता लगेगा, आंकड़ों में फंस गया आप।
Thank you, Chairman, sir.
Sir, 8 minutes only.
So as the name suggests, so it is only an interim budget with the full budget slated to be presented in July 2024. Therefore, instead of getting into the granular details of budgetary allocations for various sectors, which many speakers have spoken about, I would like to offer a few suggestions for government to consider while presenting the full budget in July 2024. Before doing that, I would like to compliment the government and the finance minister for exercising fiscal prudence and not being drawn into populist pressures in view of the impending Lok Sabha elections, but maintaining continuity in the broad policy trajectory of the last 4 years of an investment-driven, digitally anchored, and innovation-nurturing economic growth model, thereby reaffirming macroeconomic stability and boosting the confidence of citizens, rating agencies, and businesses in the country as well as abroad. So increase in capital expenditure by 11%, a research fund of rupees 1 lakh crore, the new urban housing scheme for the middle class, withdrawal of petty direct tax demands, making PMJY more inclusive by including ASHA and Anganwadi workers and helpers, free vaccination against cervical cancer are all steps in the right direction. So I'll correct it, it is only promoting vaccination, not a free vaccination. I would also like to really appreciate the outcome and not outlay-centric welfare saturation model followed by the government. This is something which the finance minister mentioned in the budget. So now I'll start with the economy, my suggestions. So while debt financing is common for a growing economy, India's current public debt to GDP ratio stands at a high of 81%, of which approximately 57% belongs to the central government and the balance to the states. Even though fiscal deficits have been kept under a tight leash following a glide path, a recent IMF report raised concerns about long-term sustainability of India's debts. I'm happy that the interim budget has recognized this and has estimated less borrowings in 2024-25 compared to 23-24 from 15.5 lakh crores to 14.13 lakh crores. However, can we do something more? The government has met its disinvestment targets only twice during the last 10 years, in 2017-18 and in 2018-19. We have to review our strategy on this front and not completely abandon it if value can be added or unlocked in certain identified CPSEs by this route. This could reduce the deficit burden. So since 2021, Odisha has been presenting a status paper on public debt and a fiscal risk statement along with the budget every year. This practice could probably be followed here. I think a separate committee should be set up to engage with this issue in greater detail, and if structural changes are warranted in current practice of RBI as being responsible for debt management of the central government, then the same could be followed. So India's overall tax to GDP ratio is around 18%, center it is about 11.6%. There is therefore a need to hasten pending GST reforms of upgrading the GST network to prevent fake supplies and fraudulent claims of input tax credit, explore the possibility of taxing new emerging technology-backed digital platforms that host online games, private virtual digital assets by way of government regulation, and similar such initiatives, and exploring the possibility of non-tax revenue from user charges on various UPI applications, securities, and capital market transactions. So the second point is on subsidy administration. So there is an urgent need for a revision in the policy pertaining to two of the highest subsidy costs for the exchequer, which is the fertilizer subsidy and the food subsidy. So though India leads globally in average in several crops, our productivity is low compared to global average in these crops and has in fact been declining continuously despite increasing use of chemical fertilizers and a fatter subsidy bill as a consequence. Imbalanced use of nutrients, deficiency of micro and secondary nutrients, and depletion of soil organic carbon due to overuse of fertilizers are some of the prime reasons for reducing yield. A possible solution to this can be setting up a cap on a number of subsidized bags of fertilizer per farmer, as has been done for subsidized LPG cylinders, bringing urea under the NBS regime, and many other efforts. I also recommend that the Department of Fertilizer and not the Department of Agriculture be allocated separate funds for promotion of nano fertilizers and organic fertilizers so as to reorient their basic vision and objective towards natural farming and not work at cross purposes with the Ministry of Agriculture by promoting use of chemical fertilizers. There has to be a long-term plan to phase down use of chemical fertilizers over a fixed period of time. In the immediate term, in order to address the rising import dependency on urea, the GST on raw materials for fertilizers ought to be reduced and incentivize domestic production of the same. With respect to food subsidies, I highly recommend directing them from the mainstream crops like wheat and paddy to coarse grains like millet, which would reduce groundwater usage, improve the soil regime, and empower the tribals too, as millets are largely grown by tribals. This would lead to transfer of subsidies to tribals. A national plan should be prepared for gradual implementation of the above strategy. As far as inflation is concerned, approximately 40% of agricultural produce in India is wasted. So it is an apt time to implement post-harvest farm gate to market end-to-end integrated cold chain systems and processing facilities alongside increasing investment in climate resilient agricultural practices. I am happy that the Finance Minister has recognized this in her budget. As far as employment is concerned, so my suggestion is that given the gender disparity in the labor market, what could be done is to bring women into the labor force through SHGs and gradually building their capacity to upgrade themselves into micro and small enterprises, a model that Orissa government has started following under the direct leadership and direct guidance of Honorable Chief Minister Sri Naveen Patnaik. We could at least have 5 medium small enterprises in each district within the next 2 years through a concerted intervention which will be women-led. While several steps are being taken to boost manufacturing sector in the PLI scheme, I would strongly suggest that PLI schemes separately for handmade weaving and crafts, where 56% of the labor force are women, could be thought of different from the textile sector. So on financial regulators, my suggestion is that there is a need to develop institutional structures and protocols with a defined point of closure in place, which is publicly notified, so that people who are to inquire about the status of licenses, about removal of imposed restrictions and interpretations can get guidance. This grievance redressal mechanism is currently missing in the regulation sector, particularly in the financial space. This needs to be built.
Thank you.
Sir, last 1 minute. Sir, there is a need to promote use of regulatory sandboxes to ease the understanding of startups and MSMEs of the regulatory requirements under their compliance. This could also be thought of. So lastly, I would like to thank the Honorable Finance Minister who mentioned that Union government will focus on the states in Eastern India and ensure that they play a pivotal role in growth as engines in, sir, 1 minute, sir, in realizing the vision of Viksit Bharat. So this is my last speech,
We have to conclude at 6, sir.
So I'll just finish half a second. I would therefore like to reiterate the demand of Honorable CM of Orissa to confer a special focus state on Orissa and transfer at least 60% of the clean energy cess collected on coal extracted from state to state, countering the scourge of natural disasters regularly encountered by Orissa. These are just a few suggestions for kind consideration. Thank you, sir.